He was a man who walked among us, someone who blended into the crowd, who was hiding behind this horrifying mask of normalcy. Peter Tobin, a father, a husband, and one of Scotland's most prolific serial killers. His crimes undoubtedly shocked the nation, but his secrets might never be fully uncovered. This is a story of a man whose darkness knew no bounds, and the investigators who dared to uncover it. This is the bone-chilling case of Peter Tobin. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Oh yeah. Today, surprisingly, shockingly, we are covering another absolute POS, and that is the Scottish serial killer, Peter Tobin. Honestly, at this point, I might start masking my accent because I don't want to be associated with these freaks. Peter Tobin, lowlife, scumbag, creep, cretin. We're getting into it all today, but before we do, please make sure you are subscribed, get that notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week on a Sunday, sometimes on a Wednesday and a Friday with my little series that I've got going on. On Fridays you can tune in to my Friday Night Frights, which is when I'm telling you some of the scariest stories on Reddit. That is going to be some people's true crime encounters, things that they themselves have encountered in their day-to-day life, or some creepy paranormal stories. What about both? On Wednesdays, I will be bringing you compilation videos to keep you company whilst you clean, whilst you sleep, whilst you drive, or whilst you work. I'm not watching you whilst you sleep, but I will be there, in your ear or in the distance with hours and hours worth of true crime content. And if you're new here, hey, hi, it's me, Anna. If true crime is your jam, I highly suggest you subscribe, get the notification bell on below, for all the reasons that I've just told you. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrifying, terrifying case of Peter Tobin. I can't even lie to you. I have been sitting here for, I'm going to say 30, 35, 40, an hour, a long time, just contemplating when to start filming this video, because I hate this guy and I hate them all, but there's some of them that I'm just like, I just want to punch him in the face. So yeah, putting it off because I hate this guy, but also, your gal's tired. Honestly, like the bank holiday weekend, meant to be a weekend of rest, and I was just on it, creating the content, and like I'm proud of myself, but low-key I'm like, I need a nap. I need a nap. But then on the flip side, I'm also like, hell nah, I need to make sure my content be created because I've got a community of people who I want to chat with every single Sunday. So here we are. Peter Tobin, he looks slightly alive. It's hard to tell with a face like that. Is he alive? Is he dead? I don't know. Like, if you told me this guy was taxidermied, I would not deny your claims. Just being honest. Oh my god. Oh, I used like the wrong side of my mirror, and for a hot second I was like, if I went blind. But I was on like the zoomy up side, not the far away side, so got that sorted. Anywho, Peter Tobin, weirdo. He was born on August 27th of 1946. He was born in Johnston, Renfrewshire in Scotland. Yep, we've got another one for you. I, as a Scottish person, am so sorry because we have created some monsters. Now, Tobin, he was youngest of 8 children to his parents, Daniel and Marjorie Tobin. Now, it was said that he was a really difficult child to deal with, like, not being funny. I'm surprised Marjorie and Daniel, didn't like give him up for adoption or leave him on someone else's doorstep because, yeah. He caused his parents a lot of grief. And I mean a lot of grief, constantly getting in trouble, constantly abusing other neighbourhood children. They had people at their door like, get your son under control. By the age of 7, Peter Tobin's parents could not get him under control. They could not deal with him any longer, and they had sent him off to an approved school to see if that would help out his behaviour. Now, as these cases go, these people go to approved schools and it just seems to make them worse. Also, I tweezed a blackhead out of my cheek and I've ripped open my face. So let's not talk about the little elephant in the room. So as we said, this approved school, it just doesn't work, and later on Tobin would be sent to serve a sentence in a borstal or youth detention centre. You can call it either or. And then later in 1970, he would be convicted and imprisoned within England for burglary and forgery. I can't believe I just said burglary first time round. My God, I'm honestly improving. I'm really improving, because it used to take me like 10 million attempts to say burglary. Celebrate the small things, hey? So Tobin, he completes this sentence and he decides to move to Brighton of England, and whilst he was here, he would marry his 17-year-old girlfriend by the name of Margaret Mountney. Now, this marriage ended as quickly as it started. Like, honestly, after just 1 year in 1971, Margaret thought, hell nah, this guy is not for me, and she quickly packs her bags, leaves, and gets a divorce. Well done, Margaret. Now, young Toby boy, even though he's had this kind of whirlwind romance with Margaret Mountney, he's like, nah, do you know what? I might look half dead, I might look as though I'm on my road out, but I'm not ready to declare my love life dead, so I'm going to seek out someone else. So in 1973, he would marry a local nurse by the name of Sylvia Jeffries. Sylvia was just 30 years old at the time of their marriage, and later that same year, they had a son together called Ian. Then in 1975, they would go on to have a daughter that they would call Claire, but sadly, Claire, she would die very soon after her birth. Now, credit where it's due, this marriage for Tobin was kind of like his record. You know, this marriage lasted 3 years, ending in 1976 when Sylvia had taken off with her son Ian. And like, honestly, thank goodness. And somehow, again, I don't know how, because it certainly wasn't to do with this guy's looks, he was able to get himself another wife. This was Kathy Wilson. They had married in 1989. They then had a son called Daniel later that same year. Then in 1990, Kathy and Tobin, they would move to West Lothian of Scotland. And this is where the marriage would very quickly fall apart. It was evident that there was plenty of cracks in this marriage, and Kathy had once been this really bright, bubbly person, and her light had just dimmed since marrying Tobin. So Kathy, she moves back to Hampshire, she gets the heck out of Dodge, away from Tobin, and then the marriage ends. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, how come all 3 wives had left Tobin? Obviously, there must have been something on his part, because how could 3 women all come to the same conclusion that they don't in fact want to be with him anymore? So, did he smell? Did he have a bad dress sense? Or could it be that he was a completely unstable, sociopathic, psychopathic, maniac monster? And listen, it's a real Sophie's choice, so I'm going to give you a minute. You know, just mull it over, see what you think. Now, if you guess that he is a complete, utter psychopath, you would be absolutely correct. Well done. As a father, this guy does not get any better. He was deemed to be a very absent father. He showed absolutely no interest in his children until it was maybe something that worked in his favour, until he could maybe rile up his ex-wives by, you know, trying to get custody of the child. But apart from that, these children were just seen as an inconvenience to Tobin. And honestly, at most points in time, he would do everything he could to avoid having to spend any time with them whatsoever. And as far as how he was able to land and lose these wives in the first place, let's take a dive in, shall we? There's a lot to unpack. Now, each of his ex-wives had very much the exact same things to say about him. At first, when he came into their lives, he was charming, he was attentive, he gave them a lot of attention, paid them a lot of compliments, he was well dressed, apparently, but you know, a fancy pair of shoes and a pair of tight-fitting jeans cannot conceal all evil. As soon as these women had entered into a relationship with Tobin is when he would reveal his manipulative, controlling, sadistic, horrifying tendencies. Very quickly, his wives would become terrified of the man that was in front of them. They felt like they had no idea who Tobin really was, and they had no idea just what he was capable of. I mean, after all, at this point, he is physically and emotionally abusive to his wives. He threatens them. He is very angry all the time. They just didn't know what to expect next. And these women, although they were scared to leave, they were even more terrified that if they remained with Tobin might hurt the children to get back at the wives. His wives had also stated that it was very, very clear to them that Tobin got some kind of kick out of being this horrific monster. If he attacked or berated them, he would do it with a big grin on his face, grinning, knowing that he is hurting these wives. And they said within his face, especially within his eyes, was this eerie, terrifying, unsettling darkness. And I'm sure you will all agree that every single one of these women who found it in them to leave Peter Tobin had a lucky escape. But unfortunately, not all the women who would cross paths with this evil, sadistic monster would make it out alive. In 1991, Tobin would move to Margate of Kent, and then in 1993 to Havant of Hampshire to apparently be near his son. But everything from this moment forward just goes further downhill. On August the 4th of 1993, two 14-year-old girls had went over to the Lee Park apartment building. They were over there to visit someone. The person that they were visiting wasn't actually in at the time, and they had stopped by Peter Tobin's flat and asked, could we wait here so we're not having to wait by ourselves? And this man, who seemed kind and endearing, of course said yes to these young girls. But when Tobin invited these young girls into his flat, he would subject them to the most horrifying attack. Once these girls was in his flat, he pulled a knife on both of them. He threatened both of their lives, telling them that if they tried to escape, he would murder them. They just need to do what he's telling them and they'll be okay. So he forces these young girls to drink cider, to drink straight vodka, in an attempt to subdue them. He then brutally sexually assaulted each one of these young girls, raped them both. He then stabs both of these young girls in the presence of his own son. He then goes over, turns on the gas cooker, doesn't light it, then walks out of the apartment, leaving them to die. But these young girls would not die. They'd survive. At this point, Tobin knows right away that the police are going to be on to him. So he needs to get away. He needs to go into hiding, basically. And he decides that he is going to join this Jesus Fellowship, which was a religious sect in Coventry. And he honestly thought he had it all planned. He was going to go there, he'd live under a false name, and all would be well in Peter Tobin's world. But that's not the case. Unfortunately for Tobin, he would be caught when his blue Austin Metro car was spotted outside the fellowship. On May the 18th of 1994, Tobin, he would enter a guilty plea at the Winchester Crown Court, and this ultimately gave him a 14-year sentence. Now in 2004, at the age of 58, Peter Tobin would be released from prison, returned to Paisley, Renfrewshire of Scotland, and left to live his life. Why is this man getting out of prison after raping and attempting to murder two 14-year-old girls? Where's the justice? And listen, as we know, in most of these cases, someone getting a prison sentence and then getting out of prison, a lot of people expect that prison's going to have changed them, that these people will see the error of their ways and that they'll come out being better people. But let's be honest, there is some people that cannot be rehabilitated, and Peter Tobin was one of them. Because when he got out of prison, he wasn't thinking of playing by the rules, becoming a good guy. He was just thinking of how he could unleash his venom and evil on even more girls without being caught. So, September of 2006, Peter Tobin at this point is going by another alias, because let's be real, who would hire Peter Tobin if he went by his name and they were able to see his criminal record of raping 14-year-old girls and attempting to murder them? He's probably not going to be hired. So he goes under the alias of Pat McLaughlin, and he gets a job as a handyman at St Patrick's Church in Anderston of Glasgow. And this alias really seemed to work for him, because With this alias, Pat McLaughlin's not going to flash up on the violent sex offender register like Peter Tobin would, so he gets to keep his dark, evil secret all to himself. Now, Angelika Kluk, she was a 23-year-old Polish student, and she was staying at the Presbytery of St Patrick's Church. Presbytery of St Patrick's Church. Sorry, that's a hard word. Now, whilst at this church, she would work as a cleaner, and the reason that she had taken on this role was so she could fund her Scandinavian studies at the University of Gdansk. Angelika was described as intelligent, incredibly kind, full of life, and just one of those great people. Angelika had so much passion and so much desire for travel and new experiences. She loved learning about different places and different cultures. And honestly, this is kind of what sent her to Scotland in 2005. She wanted to know about Scotland, meet Scottish people, and so far it had been a really pleasant experience. Angelika would even work alongside the church's handyman, Pat McLaughlin. And Pat McLaughlin, we know he's a creep, but Angelika thought he was this harmless old man. He referred to Angelika as his wee apprentice, which is like a pet name. It's like a term of endearment. But we all know that this will be something so much more sinister than Angelika could ever have imagined or expected. On September the 24th of 2006, Angelika would be left alone with Pat McLaughlin. She was doing her cleaning duties and Pat was doing his handyman duties. And this would be the last time that Angelika would ever be seen alive. Now, horrifyingly, as soon as Tobin realised that there was no one around to witness what would happen between him and Angelika, this is when he would launch a horrific attack upon her. This attack, it wasn't something that was spur of the moment or just happened, like he snapped and attacked her. He had been thinking about this meticulously for the longest time, but it just so happens this was the perfect time for him. So Tobin, he lunges at Angelika. She is an absolute warrior. She is trying to fight this man off. He is brutally beating her, brutally attacking her, but she is not going down without a fight. And honestly, at some points it seemed as though Angelika might be able to get the better of Tobin. And it's almost like he knew this because he knew that he had to grab a weapon. So he grabs a wooden table leg and he bludgeons Angelika with this. Now, once Angelika had been subdued by this evil man, he then bound, gagged and raped her, before then stabbing her in the chest 16 times. Just complete overkill. Now, when Tobin finally comes out of this frenzy that he's been in, this sexual attack that he just couldn't wait to do, he realises, I've done this in my place of work. People will return at any point soon. I need to get rid of Angelika's body and I need to do it quick. Bearing in mind, this man works in a church. A holy space. This is where he works. This is where he's murdered Angelika. And he decides this is where he's going to bury her body. He buries Angelika's body underneath the floorboards near the confessional within this church. Now, once he has finished concealing Angelika's body underneath the floorboards, he quickly realises, I can't stick around. People are going to find out real quick what I've done to this beautiful young girl. He realises his last haul has been yeed and he needs to get away. So immediately, once he cleans up the crime scene, the murder scene, he takes off and he flees to London. Now, he flees to London under the alias of Pat McLaughlin, but once he arrives in London, he would then put himself into a hospital under a different alias. Now, the reason he had put himself into this hospital was because he said he was experiencing chest pains. Fake chest pains, might I add. This man knew that his time was coming, and he was doing absolutely everything in his power to try and avoid capture. After Angelika's disappearance, people noticed right away she was missing. It wasn't like her to not turn up, do her duties, complete her activities for the day. And not only this, but her identification, her wallet, everything had been left behind. Things that she would desperately need if she was going to go anywhere. This was a very reliable, hard-working young woman, and she wouldn't just not turn up for work. This is not what she did. It was not within her vocabulary to miss a day. Another thing that sparked concerns right away was the fact that her sister Anita, she realised very quickly that Angelika must be missing. Something bad has happened. They would be in contact all the time. They'd talk by phone. They'd write letters if they had to. And Anita hadn't heard from her sister. Her knowing that this just isn't like Angelika, she immediately contacts the police and files a missing person report. And I have to say, very quickly after the police have been notified, an investigation would begin, which is something we do not see often enough. We see police who drag their heels, drag their asses along the ground just so they don't have to do a bit of work. Not all of them. Some of them are incredible, some are really amazing, and I do think it is just the minority that don't give a tiny rat's ass. I do believe most of them are good. And in this case, they really came through. So police, they quickly learned that Angelika had last been seen with another worker in the church. This worker was the handyman, Pat McLaughlin. And then people start thinking, actually, since Angelika's went missing, we've not actually seen Pat. Where's Pat went? Where did Pat disappear to as well? Have they left together? No, that can't be it. Could it be that Pat harmed Angelika? Well, me and you know that is absolutely the case. Now, police do check around and they are asking people, you know, have you heard from Pat? Has Pat contacted you? And when they say no, police are thinking, why not? Why has Pat not been in contact? What would he have to hide? And also, I'm sorry, but any time I say why not, all I hear in my mind is Judge Judy when she's like, did you contact the police? Why not? Why not? I freaking love her. She's like my spirit animal. Even though she's a person, she's my spirit animal. So police, they're very suspicious of this Pat McLaughlin. They delve into his history, try and see what they can find, and then they start to realise, Pat McLaughlin looks an awful lot like Peter Tobin. In fact, I think they might be the same man. They quickly realise that Pat McLaughlin was in fact the convicted violent sex offender, Peter Tobin. And now they were very, very worried. Now, because police had figured out that who they were looking for, who they believed was responsible for something terrible happened to Angelika was Peter Tobin, they start to think that something terrible might have happened to her. So they decide they're going to go back to the last location where Angelika and Peter Tobin had been seen together, which, as we know, was the church. So they're going to go back there and conduct a search of the premises. The forensic scientists, they were brought in and they were examining the floorboards when they had discovered bloodstains that had been sort of partially washed off. Because they found the bloodstains on the floorboards and yet there's no sign of Angelika, they decide that the best course of action was to lift the floorboards and look underneath. And horrifyingly, just 5 days after her murder on September the 29th of 2006, Angelika Kluk's dead body would be discovered under these floorboards. Now, police, they had immediately circulated Peter Tobin's photo. They wanted everyone everywhere to be aware who this man was, what he has done, and that he is very, very dangerous. They also make it known to people that time is of the essence because if they know this guy the way they think they do, he will strike again. So let's go back to Tobin for a second. He's tucked up in his wee hospital bed. He thinks he's made it out and he's made it out undiscovered. No one's going to know it was him. Little does he know, his ugly mug is currently in the newspapers. It's on the TV. People everywhere are seeing this. And yet he's just sitting there, smug as ever. He believes he's got away with Angelika's murder. But one of the nurses in the hospital, they look at him and they're like, I know this guy from somewhere. They're out in the hall talking to other nurses, and then on the TV, they see this taxidermied, half-alive looking guy, and they realise it's the man in their hospital bed. The man in their hospital bed is Peter Tobin, a wanted murderer. Now, thankfully, the nurse, she doesn't alert Peter Tobin. She doesn't act concerned or act as if she knows something because they don't want to spook him and then he escapes the hospital. So she immediately contacts the police, tells the police exactly where Peter Tobin is, and they arrive immediately. The evidence that was compiled against Peter Tobin was so overwhelming and so convincing that there was no question and no doubt about it that this man raped and killed Angelika Kluk. He has a 6-week trial at the High Court of Justiciary in Edinburgh, but ultimately he would be found guilty and convicted of the rape and murder of Angelika Kluk, and he would receive a life sentence. Now, this life sentence at Scotland at the time, that would come with a minimum of 22 years, so he would have to serve 22 years before he would be eligible for any kind of parole. But police at this point, they're just thinking, a guy who could so coldly and calculatedly murder someone, bury them under the floorboards, this can't be a guy who's only murdered once. There has to be more to it. There must be more victims. So police decide to launch this operation that they call Operation Anagram. Operation Anagram, what is it? This was a nationwide police investigation that was aiming to track Peter Tobin's steps all throughout his life. Where he had been, was there murders or disappearances at the time? Could he be linked to any of these? So when they're narrowing things down, they conclude that there's 13 unsolved murders, including 3 of the Bible John murders, that Peter Tobin could possibly be a suspect in. Now, whilst Peter Tobin's in prison, right, he's acting like Billy Big Balls. He is wanting to brag to any Tom, Dick, Harry, Fran, Sally that he possibly can. He's telling everyone, yeah, they've got me on one. I've murdered 48. Like, okay, do you want a badge? Honestly, you pathetic loser. And whilst this might just be a cold, calculated, evil murderer trying to show off, the police think, you know what, we believe that he has killed more, so what's the harm in working off that number, working our way down and trying to see who could possibly be linked to this man? Like, they were just so dedicated to finding out the truth and bringing justice to any victims that might remain. So they decide they're going to do a search through the Holmes database. And as we know, police forces across the UK, they were also involved and dedicated in any correlation between young girls being murdered or going missing that could possibly be connected to Peter Tobin. So police track Tobin's movements through his life and they wind up going to Margate of Kent. And obviously at this point they know his preferred ways of concealing bodies, which is to bury them. And they decide in November of 2007 that they're going to dig up his garden in Margate. Whilst they do this, they find the buried bodies of 2 teenage girls, Vicky Hamilton and Dinah Nichols. Now, Vicky Hamilton, she was 15 years old when she was last seen on February 10th of 1991. When she was last seen, she had been waiting for a bus to Reading near Falkirk. And while she was waiting for this bus, Peter Tobin had approached Vicky just looking like this concerned man. He was saying he just wants to make sure she gets home safely. You know, she's only a young girl. It can be really dangerous travelling alone. He seemed like a really decent human being. But she had no idea she was looking in the eyes of complete evil. So Tobin had said to Vicky, you know, to make sure you get home safe, why don't I give you a lift? That way I'll sleep at night knowing that I helped you get home. And Vicky, again, doesn't see any red flags because he was so good at concealing it. I mean, you heard what his wife said. His wife said that he was charming, attentive. He seemed like a really decent guy at first. And Vicky's seen these qualities in him at this moment, and she accepts a ride home. But Vicky would never make it home. Instead, Peter Tobin had decided to take Vicky back to his home in Bathgate once he had been able to gain her trust. Once she was back at Tobin's home, he drugged, raped, and murdered her. After he murdered Vicky, he dismembered her body, chopping her up, and then transporting her from Bathgate to Margate, Kent, to his new home, which is where her remains would be found. Then Dinah Nichols, she was an 18-year-old student from Tillingham, Essex. She was last seen alive on August the 5th of 1991 when her and a male friend had been hitchhiking home from a music festival in Liphook, Hampshire. Now, whilst the pair were hitchhiking, they get stopped by this man, this kind man who just wants to see them get home safely. And I'm sure we can all guess who this nice man was, this kind stranger. It was Peter Tobin. And the male friend, he was dropped off at junction 8 of the M25, and this was near Reigate. But Dinah remained in the vehicle because she was heading home and she was going to continue alone with Peter Tobin to her location. But as we know, Dinah would never be seen again. Because Tobin had taken Dinah home to his home in Margate, Kent. He drugged, raped, murdered her and then buried her in his back garden alongside the remains of Vicky Hamilton. Just two young girls, their whole lives ahead of them, that just encountered evil one day. Now, Tobin thinks he's smart. Tobin thinks that he can finesse the system. So to throw her family off the scent, he starts making cash withdrawals from her building society account. Now, he was doing this in Sussex and Hampshire to make it look as though she was moving around. But this only made her family more suspicious because Dinah had told her family the money in her bank account was savings for further education or to go travelling one day. She's not travelling from Sussex to Hampshire. That wasn't the dream. That wasn't what she was saving her money on. So Peter Tobin doing this just kept her family on a trail, on a scent. It didn't do what he intended it to. However, because Dinah was never found, her body hadn't been found up until this time. Police ultimately had no leads. They had no idea where they could go next. And her case would go cold and unsolved for 16 years. Alongside Vicky Hamilton's. So in November of 2008, Tobin, he would be tried at the High Court of Dundee for Vicky's murder. And again, the evidence is overwhelming. They've got DNA evidence, they've got eyewitnesses. Tobin having two houses in Bathgate and Margate, Kent, where she would be found. They've also got fingerprints that they found on a dagger. They've got Vicky's purse and the sheet that she had been wrapped in. All with DNA evidence pointing to Tobin. Now, after a month-long trial, Tobin would be convicted with Vicky Hamilton's murder, and on December the 2nd of 2008, he would be sentenced to life in prison. And then on December the 16th of 2009, Peter Tobin, he would be handed his third life sentence for the murder of Dinah Nichols. And in this case, the jury, they only took 15 minutes to convict him. Like, the jury heard the case and they just thought, slam dunk. Nothing to think about. Like, let's just sit, have a quick game of Connect 4 and then we'll get back out there, make it look like we thought about it, but really there was nothing to think about. Now, Tobin had also been linked to the disappearance of another two young girls. So there was Louise Kay. She was only 18 years old when she had disappeared from Beachy Head in Eastbourne. She was last seen in 1988 after she had told her friends that she was at the beach with that she was going to go and sleep in her car, which wasn't unusual for Louise. She would do this pretty often. After this, Louise and her gold Ford Fiesta have never been seen again. Now, Operation Anagram, that had been able to establish that Peter Tobin had been working in a hotel in Eastbourne at the time Louise disappeared. And it was also confirmed that after Louise had disappeared, all of a sudden, Tobin, he was selling a small hand-painted car. A car he had painted over it. What colour was underneath, Tobin? Was it gold? Probably. So of course, police believe that he had repainted Louise's car and then sold it to get rid of any evidence. And her friend recalled that shortly before her disappearance, Louise had met this mysterious Scottish man, that's how she described him, and this man had given her petrol money for no reason other than being kind. And detectives and police, everyone, they wholeheartedly believe that Tobin is responsible for Louise's disappearance and ultimately her murder, but they've never been able to directly link him, so he's not been charged with it. And I get that they can't charge him with the evidence, but I mean, like, come on. The evidence is practically there. I mean, it all points to him. Now, Jessie Earl, she had also disappeared from Eastbourne when she was only 22 years old, and sadly her skeletonized remains would be found in 1989. Her body had been concealed in dense shrubbery at Beachy Head, the very same place that Louise had disappeared from. Jessie's own bra had been used as a restraint. It had been tied around her wrist to hold her bound. Now, Tobin was living in the same area at this very time, and he was known to be working as a handyman at the Holy Trinity Church in Eastbourne. Like, come on. Just convict him. Now, people who knew Jessie said that she had complained of being nervous about a middle-aged, strange Scottish man that she had met, and she had met him very, very close to the place that she ultimately had disappeared from. She had bumped into this man while she had been out walking, and he just left a very eerie, creepy impression on her. And many believe that this was Tobin. Now, shortly after the discovery of Jessie's body and when it had become sort of known news around town in 1989, this is when Tobin had very quickly moved himself to Bathgate. What are you hiding, Peter? I wonder. And again, everyone believes that Peter Tobin had in fact murdered Jessie, but his involvement has never been able to be proven, just like with Louise Kay. I don't know about you, but I absolutely believe that Peter Tobin murdered these two girls. Now, if you're an OG and if you've been here a long time, you might remember my Bible John video, one of the earliest videos I've done. It'll be linked below. Go watch it. Not right now. Finish this one and then go watch it. Very interesting. But Peter Tobin was actually a suspect in the Bible John murders. Now, in case you're not aware, the Bible John murders were 3 murders that took place in Glasgow in the 1980s, all sort of surrounding the Barrowland Ballroom. There was 3 victims: Patricia Docker, who was 25, Jemima MacDonald, who was 32, and then Helen Pittock, who was 29. Now, it had been rumoured that Peter Tobin would react very violently to any of his victims who were on their period, who were menstruating. And this was such a big deal in the Bible John murders and was thought to be the motive behind the Bible John killings. However, Peter Tobin, he would be sort of ruled out of the Bible John murders due to Operation Anagram, which confirmed that when the 3rd Bible John murder had taken place, Peter Tobin was still in Brighton. Now listen, could he have travelled to Brighton and back? Yes. Would it have taken him a bit of time? Yes. But he still could have. Now, semen from the Bible John murders was compared with that of Tobin's. There was no direct match. Not only that, but bite marks from a victim in the Bible John murders had been compared to Peter Tobin's dental records, and again, there was no match, ultimately ruling out Peter Tobin as Bible John. So on August the 9th of 2012, Peter Tobin, he starts crying wolf again. He's like, my chest, take me to the hospital. He was sitting saying that he was having a heart attack, but of course, yet again, this was not true. Then on July the 1st of 2015, Tobin, he was slashed in his sleep with a razor blade by a fellow inmate, and honestly, can we get this guy's address or inmate number, because we need to send him some flowers. Now, unfortunately, this wound wasn't deep enough to kill him, but it was certainly deep enough to leave him scared and injured. So he had a little 20cm scar running all the way down his face, but he looked well hard. In February of 2016, he was hospitalised again. They believed that he had suffered from a stroke. In 2019, he was reported as being incredibly frail and suffering from cancer. He was taken into hospital again on March the 30th of 2022, but again he's released 2 days later. He just likes to cry wolf. But then finally, on October the 8th of 2022, at the age of 78, this monstrous, evil POS would finally die. I said what I said, and I'm not sorry. He would be cremated on October the 16th of 2022, and he had to be scattered at sea because no relatives or friends wanted to claim this low-life scumbag's body. And I don't blame them. I'm right there with you. And honestly, more power to you. But yeah, that was finally the end of him. Ding dong, Peter's dead. We can all safely go to bed. It's just absolutely horrifying, shocking, evil, wicked, cruel, beyond words. And I hope to God that each one of these murderers meet a very horrible end, and that's just my opinion. Now, before I do close out this video today, I want to bring it right back round to the victims, the people who actually matter in this case. I'm going to have their photos up on screen. I am going to include the 2 girls that, you know, he wasn't convicted for their murders, but I wholeheartedly believe, and the police wholeheartedly believe, they were victims of Peter Tobin. Remember their faces, remember their names, but remember that these young women were so much more than how they died. So much more than that. They were clever, they were intelligent, they were kind, they were loved by their family and friends, and they loved their family and friends. They are human beings that matter to people. They are human beings who are missed every single day. These young women should have went on to further their education, to travel, to have a family if that's something they wanted, to see their parents grow old, to watch their siblings grow up, and they were never given the chance. But my loves, that is it for another true crime and makeup episode. I really hope you did find this one interesting. I hope for some of you it was one you've not heard of. I know it's quite a big case in Scotland, possibly within the UK, but I know there will be some people out there who haven't heard of it yet. If you enjoy my content, please make sure you are subscribed, get that notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week on a Sunday with my bonus uploads on a Wednesday and Friday here and there. Let me know if you are enjoying the series on a Friday, the Friday Night Fright. I really enjoy it, but it's not about what I like, it's about what you like. Also, let me know if you would like me to continue with the compilation videos. I just see so many comments where people listen to me whilst they work, or they clean, or they're driving, or before they go to bed. And when I seen Danielle and Bailey doing the compilation videos with those people in mind, I was like, oh my god, I should do that. I just thought that'd be a really nice addition for you guys as well, because I know a lot of you do listen to me whilst you do something else. So let me know if you would like me to continue with that. As always, any details you need are down below, but that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person. Do not be a bad person. Stay safe. Look after each other. And I'll see you in the next one.